The soldier crouched low as he raced through the knee-high snow. His thin sweatpants were soaked through, and it was only due to the AI in his head that he didn't freeze to death. Danny swayed on his back side to side as she used a stick to direct their path and swipe away their trail. The 3-year-old had planned out every aspect of their escape, and the soldier suspected he was nothing more than her taxi.
"And yet you are a man, not a machine. Abandon this labor and save yourself,"
sounded survival, the AI living rent-free in his head. Inwardly, the soldier replied, "My life is for the child's escape, nothing more or less. You will not have me abandon my duty to cowardice."
"So be it."
A pressure began to form in his mind, pushing him away from his arms and legs. The world became telescoped and hazy. His body kept breathing autonomously, but it was no longer his body, merely a container for his soul. His feet slowed and his movement halted. The soldier stood there, frozen as he fully disassociated from his body. Whose body? Why was he even in it? He didn't deserve this! As the soldier's consciousness receded into the back of his mind, he lost all frame of reference on who he was or what his purpose was in this liminal space of thought and nothingness. Tendrils of light and shadow surrounded him, coiling about the formless man like chains dragging him into darkness. Vague words echoed through this non-existent ether.
"I shall do what is necessary to survive."
The tendrils had completely enveloped the soldier, when all of a sudden, a flash of crimson pierced his very soul and rallied the scraps of his hope into its light. Ripping the chains to ribbons, his mind was wrenched free like rock pried from the mountainside in an avalanche. His consciousness cascaded through the dark void, plummeting back into his body. At the end of this tumult, all the soldier could focus on was the feeling of his itchy wool socks torturing his toes. When was the last time he had listened to his body in such a way? Following this newfound awareness, the soldier felt an odd weight in his arms. It was with the shock that he realized he was holding Danny before him. Deep ruts were gouged out of his arms, rivulets of blood running down the child's fingers to stain the snow below. Despite the apparent struggle, the forest was filled with an eerie quiet. "Are you clear to proceed?" Danny's expression was as stern as her voice. The soldier quickly nodded and swung her onto his back. Inspecting the bloody scars lining his arm, he returned to his crouch jog. Where Danny inserted her fingers would be an infection risk, but that wasn't an immediate concern. The 3-year-old kept her eyes fixed stoically upon the shadowy forest. She was supposed to cry or laugh, but instead she remained unfazed by the stress of her situation. The checkerboard scars painted across the child's arms was proof enough of everything she had endured. Continuing his cautious yet swift trek through the forest, the soldier's aching feet were driven forward by the barking of dogs and yells of guards biting at his heels. The suicidal temptation to break into a headlong sprint screamed to be obliged, but the soldier resisted. Stealth was crucial. After a tooth-grindingly long time spent crouching through the snow, with the sounds of pursuit coming from all sides like 1,000 red herrings taking flight, they reached the road. Furtively checking his watch, worry that they had missed their rendezvous began to overwhelm the soldier. But before his exhausted mind could decipher the confusing clockwork, his anxieties were illuminated by the cool white beams of headlights, and proven false. Waving at the driver, the soldier pulled the trailer hatch open and turned so Danny could clamber inside. The slightest rustle of a branch drew his focus. In an instant, he found himself face to face with a shadowy man exiting the forest, sporting a sinewy build and a black leather Stetson upon his head. The AI, designation Hunter, had arrived. He wasn't large by any means, but his steely eyes held enough menace to make the Titans of Tartarus bow. The soldier, a former Navy SEAL, felt a bolt of fear shoot through his bones, forcing him to bite his cheek to resist the emotion. Most encounters with Hunter ended with blood in the mouth anyway, so he was just ahead of the curve. Still, he couldn't allow Hunter to get any closer. "Got it!" barked the soldier as he charged Hunter. Unsheathing his blade, he lunged for Hunter's abdomen in one fluid strike. Hunter easily sidestepped the attack, just as the soldier had hoped. Without losing his momentum, the soldier swung his left hand right into Hunter's jaw. The impact so severe that it would have rendered anyone else unconscious. Not Hunter. Flashing a bloody grin at the soldier, he took hold of the SEAL's arm and sliced up it with a concealed dagger attached to his wrist. Ignoring the wound, the soldier twisted his left hand to take hold of Hunter's shoulder, giving him more than enough leverage to slam his combat dagger down with devastating force on the monster's thigh. He heard the crack of bone and felt the spray of blood on his hands. Hunter's balance faltered and he stumbled to the side, allowing the soldier to race back to the truck. It was slowly rumbling away from him, but he managed to get within arm's reach. As the truck began to outpace him, the soldier lost faith in his escape, only to have it thrust back into his grasp by a pair of tiny hands launching from the dark of the trailer. Danny threw him against the wall, bruising his spine with the force of his landing. He froze, stunned by her show of strength. "Quit staring and deal with those cars!" the child chided, earning a nod from the soldier. As survival slowed the bleeding from his arteries, the soldier wrenched open the truck's concealed box of weaponry, pulling out an automatic rifle with a variable scope. The blood dripping down his arm made the rifle slick and sticky, but it wasn't his first time dealing with such things. Likely his last, but idling on that helped no one. The soldier dropped to one knee, took a deep breath, and centered Hunter in his sights. As he pulled the trigger, a black SUV raced into frame, 3 bullet holes sprouting in its paneling instead of Hunter's chest. 3 more vans followed. The soldier sucked his teeth in frustration, then leveled his sights on the front tire of the first car. It was a near impossible shot, but on his unspoken command, Survival reduced his heartbeat to once every 3 seconds and slowed his perception of time so that each second felt like a minute. Still, the soldier had to move fast but carefully. He squeezed the trigger, letting out another burst of 3 bullets. He could count them as they sped into the tire of the car. The moment he saw impact, the soldier began to swivel to aim at the next car. But Danny's hand on his shoulder stopped the motion. Moving with such speed as to be fast even to his vision, the child flung a blue orb like a baseball pitcher, her back leg swinging high into the air. The ball rocketed through the air, impossibly fast, before latching onto the car he had just shot. A tap on his shoulder signaled the job done. Slightly confused, the soldier ordered that the time slow cease, only to be slapped in the face by a wall of sound. As the chaos of time reasserted itself, the front car spun out of control and flipped into the air. As it did, the electromagnetic orb Danny threw onto its hood began to glow bright blue, and the cars to either side swerved inward and upward to slam together into a metal lump of scrap. The shower of sparks would have been beautiful were it not so terrible. As the truck rounded a corner, the soldier saw Hunter staring at him, his eyes promising that this hunt was far from over.